At that same hour, Gamaliel Villapando's mother, Doña Inés, was sweeping the street in front of her son's store when Abundio Martinez arrived and entered through the half-open door. He found Gamaliel asleep on the counter with his sombrero over his face to keep the flies away. He waited there quite a while for him to wake up. He was still waiting when Doña Inés finished her sweeping, poked her son in the ribs with the end of her broom, and said to him, "You've got a customer, get up." Annoyed and grumbling, Gamaliel got up. His eyes were bloodshot from having stayed up too late and from serving a bunch of drunkards, getting smashed right alongside them. As he sat on the counter, he cursed his mother, he cursed himself, and he repeatedly cursed his life that wasn't worth a damn. Then he lay back down with his hands between his legs, mumbling obscenities as he fell back to sleep. It's not my fault if drunks are still out of It's not my fault if drunks are still out this time of day. My poor boy, forgive him, Abundio. Poor guy spent the night looking after a group of out-of-towners who became more unpleasant the more they drank. What brings you here so early in the morning? She shouted as she spoke since Abundio was deaf. Just needing a cuartillo of alcohol. Has Refugio fainted again? She died on me, Madre Villa. Just last night about 11. Even though I sold my burros, sold them all hoping she'd get better. I don't hear a thing you're saying, or maybe you're not saying anything. What was that? I said I spent the night watching over my dead wife, my refugio. She took her last breath last night. I guess he's like giving his wife some sort of nomenclature, saying that like that's his refuge in Spanish. My refugio. I spent the night watching over my dead wife. My refugio. She took her last breath last night. So that's why I thought I smelled death. You know, I even told Gamaliel, it smells like someone in town has died. But he didn't listen to me, seeing as he was too busy getting wasted looking after those visitors. And you know how he is when he gets drunk. He laughs at everything and won't pay attention to no one. But tell me, do you have people coming for the wake? No one, Madre Villa. That's why I need the booze to take the pain away. You want it straight? Yes, Madre Villa. To get wasted good and fast. Hand it over quick, I'm in a hurry. Seeing it's you, I'll give you 2 deciliters or deciliters for the price of 1, but tell your dead wife I always liked her and ask her to keep me in mind when she gets to heaven. I will, Madre Villa. Tell her before she gets all cold. I'll tell her. I know she's counting on you to say prayers for her as well. Let's just say she was heartbroken when she died because no one was there to give her last rites. You mean you didn't go looking for Father Renteria? I did, but they told me he was up in the hills. And what hills? Just up there somewhere, you know. They're part of that uprising. You mean he's mixed up in that too? Lord help us, Abundio. Why should we care, Madre Villa? Don't mean a thing to us. Pour me the other one, but off the book since Gamaliel's so out of it. Just don't forget to ask Refugio to plead with God on my behalf since I can use all the help I can get. Don't worry yourself. I'll tell her as soon as I get back. I'll even have her give me word if that's what it takes for you to stop fretting. That's it. That's exactly what you should do. You know how women are. You've got to hound them to get things done on time. Abundio Martinez left another 20 centavos on the counter. Give me that other cortillo, Madre Villa. And if you want to add a little extra, well, that's up to you, but I promise to drink this one at home with my dead wife alongside my cuca. Get going then before my son gets up. He's always in a bad mood when he wakes up drunk. Be quick about it and don't forget to give my message to your wife. He was sneezing as he left the store since the alcohol was pure fire, but he had heard that's how you get drunk most quickly. So he swallowed one swig after another, fanning his mouth with the edge of his shirt. He had planned on heading straight home, where Refugio was waiting for him, but he got confused and ended up following the road that led him out of town. Damiana, Pedro Paramo called out, come and see what this man coming up the road wants. Abundio kept approaching, stumbling along, bobbing his head at times, crawling on all fours. He felt the earth turning inside out, spinning him around, and then casting him aside. He struggled to grab hold, but when he had the ground firmly in his hands, it would take off again until eventually he stood in front of a man sitting next to a door. That's when he stopped. Give me a bit of charity so I can bury my wife, he said. Damiana Cisneros prayed, deliver us, O Lord, from the snares of the evil one. She pointed her hands toward Abundio and made the sign of the cross. Abundio Martinez gazed at that woman, at the terror in her eyes, at the cross she was making right in front of him, and he shuddered. He wondered if the devil might have followed him there. He turned to look, expecting to be confronted with some malevolent being. When he saw nothing, he repeated, I've come for a little something to help bury my wife. The sun had reached as high as his back, an early morning sun almost cold, distorted by the dust kicked up from the ground. Pedro Paramo's face was buried beneath blankets as if hiding from the light, as Damiana's screams grew in strength, cutting across the fields. They're killing Don Pedro. Abundio Martinez could hear the woman screaming. He didn't know how to make her stop. He couldn't gather his thoughts. He imagined that people, even a long way off, must be able to hear the old woman's shouts. Perhaps even his wife could hear them, since the racket was making his own ears ring, although he couldn't understand a word she was saying. He thought of his wife laid out on her bed all alone, resting outside in the cool air of the patio, where he had taken her to slow the stench. His kuka, who just yesterday had slept with him, still very much alive, frisky as a filly, nibbling at him and rubbing her nose against his. This was the same woman who had given him a tiny little son that died only moments after birth, supposedly because she was unwell from the evil eye, the chills, dyspepsia, or any number of other maladies. So said the doctor, who came to see her at the last minute, but only after Abundio was forced to sell his burros on account of how much he charged. But it was all for nothing. His kuka, who was now stretched out and covered in dew, her eyes closed tight, unable to watch this sunrise or any to come. Help me, he said. Give me a little something. But even he couldn't hear his own words. The woman's screams were deafening. A few black dots approached along the road from Comala. Soon those dots had turned into men, and then they were here, standing at his side. Damiana Cisneros stopped screaming. She stopped making the sign of the cross. She had fallen to the ground, her mouth open, as if she were yawning. The men who had arrived lifted her off the ground and carried her into the house. Are you all right, Patron? They asked. Pedro Paramo's face appeared, but all he did was shake his head. They disarmed Abundio, who still had the bloody knife in his hand. Come with us, they told him. You've gotten yourself in quite the mess. And he followed. Before getting to town, he asked to be excused. He moved to the side of the road and vomited out a yellowish substance, something like bile, lots and lots of it, as if he had guzzled 10 liters of water. After that, his head began to burn and his tongue felt swollen. I'm drunk, he said. He returned to where the men were waiting for him. He leaned on their shoulders, and they dragged him along, opening a furrow in the ground with the tips of his feet. So I guess he stabbed Pedro Paramo. Yeah, I guess, yeah.